The 2021 NFL Draft will be defined by its quarterbacks. It features a prospect who's considered the best we've seen in a decade, as well as several potential game changers who have left teams jockeying for position at the top of the draft board.
Sometimes when the pocket breaks down or the first read is unavailable, you need a quarterback to simply make a play. And Zach Wilson is the most exciting playmaker prospect at the quarterback position in the 2021 NFL Draft.
The 2021 NFL quarterback class had a tremendous amount of hype entering the draft, and there were 5 quarterbacks selected in the first 15 picks. They were, of course, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones. And here we are a little over 4 years later, and 4 of the 5 quarterbacks from this class are on their 3rd team. This was a very sought-after class, as Trevor Lawrence was viewed as the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck, and because Zach Wilson went to BYU, he was at times referred to as Mormon Mahomes. Trey Lance looked really good in 2019 as he went the entire season without throwing an interception. He only had 1 interception his entire collegiate career, which was in the lone game he played in 2020 against Central Arkansas. Justin Fields was a very fun dual-threat quarterback at Ohio State, and Mac Jones led the Alabama Crimson Tide to a national title as he was a Heisman finalist, finishing 3rd behind Trevor Lawrence and, of course, his Alabama teammate, receiver Devontae Smith. But here we are in 2025, and despite the 2021 draft class having guys like Jamar Chase, Micah Parsons, Penei Sewell, and Pat Surtain, the quarterbacks from this class disappointed, big time. And in today's video, we're going to go back and discuss why each player disappointed, what went wrong, and where we are today. And if you could like the video before we get started, I'd really appreciate it, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with Jags quarterback Trevor Lawrence. And because Trevor Lawrence was the most hyped up quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck, the expectations entering his rookie year were enormous and in a lot of ways unfair. Now, where we are in the present day with Trevor Lawrence is an entirely different conversation because some people want to place him in the draft disappointment bucket, and I completely understand, and we'll get to that in a minute, but I don't think any quarterback in the history of the NFL would have led this specific team, the 2021 Jags, to anything of note. The top 5 receivers in 2021 for Jacksonville were Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, Laquan Treadwell, Dan Arnold, and James O'Shaughnessy, and this is of course in terms of receiving yards. And the head coach was Urban Meyer, and because Trevor Lawrence was dubbed the best quarterback since Andrew Luck, there were a lot of people that expected Trevor to lead that specific team to 8, 9, or 10 wins in his rookie year, and to throw for 4,000 yards and 25 touchdowns, and to bring the Jags back in 1 year, and not surprisingly, with one of the worst supporting casts for a rookie quarterback in NFL history, it did not work out. 2022 is different though, as they won the AFC South. Lawrence had 25 passing touchdowns to just 8 interceptions, and after starting the year 3-7, they won 6 of their final 7 games, including the big comeback against the Ravens, and won a playoff game over the Chargers in the wild card round in a game they were down 27-0 at one point. And even for a good chunk of 2023, the Jags looked like a solid team. They had their ups and downs, but after getting their tails tucked between their legs by a rookie CJ Stroud in his 3rd career start, and starting the year 1-2, they won 7 of their next 8 games, including getting revenge over the Texans. But since then, for Trevor and the Jags, it's been downhill. Since that game, the Jags are just 5-19 as a team, and obviously Trevor missed some time during the 2024 season, and you may be surprised to know that since the Week 12 win over the Texans in 2023, the Jags are just 2-13 when Trevor Lawrence starts, and Trevor has a touchdown to interception ratio of just 20-14 in those 15 games. And in the present day, I think Trevor Lawrence is a pretty polarizing figure. There are some people who are entirely out on him and point to the fact that he only has 69 touchdown passes in 4 seasons, which already isn't good for a former first-round pick, let alone one who is the 3rd best quarterback prospect in the last 25 years, at least from a national media standpoint, only behind Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, of course. And while I didn't think Trevor was good in 2024, as there were a lot of times on tape where he left a lot of meat on the bone, I think both things can be true regarding Trevor Lawrence. The first, of course, being he has disappointed as an NFL player relative to his pre-draft hype. We are 4+ years into his career, and there's a lot of people that are banking on a 10 to 15 game stretch from a couple of years ago to justify why they believe in him. but I think the other part can be true in that his supporting cast hasn't been great either. And also, please remember, Brian Thomas Jr. just got there and certainly has not been there for the entirety of Trevor's career either. And while I do think Trevor's numbers will improve under new head coach Liam Cohen, as I really do like the Jags offense this year, and not just because of BTJ and Travis Hunter, but because I really like the idea of Tank Bigsby and Bajal Tootin, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is ever going to be solidified as a top 5 or 6 guy. Maybe I'm wrong and he has a 5th-year jump, but for who he was as an NFL draft prospect, he has been an underwhelming NFL player. Zach Wilson from BYU was the number 2 pick in the 2021 draft, and the point we're going to make with Zach Wilson certainly applies to Justin Fields, and we'll even discuss this during the Justin Fields portion later in the video, but a lot of the time when you have a draft disappointment as a quarterback, or draft bust, and I would personally consider Zach Wilson a draft bust, and I would consider Justin Fields a draft disappointment. I'll get more into the separation between the two in a minute, but a lot of the time when you have either one of those, draft disappointment or draft bust, a lot of the time it's not just the quarterback. A lot of the time it's the organization too. And I go back to the 2021 Jets when Zach Wilson was a 22-year-old rookie out of BYU, and the receivers he was throwing the ball to that year were Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, Keelan Cole, Jamison Crowder, Braxton Berrios, Ty Johnson, and Michael Carter, and that's not really setting your rookie quarterback up for success going from Provo, Utah to the Big Apple in a situation where he desperately needs set up for success. Now, I think with the Mormon Mahomes comparison and with the fact that he threw 33 touchdowns to 3 interceptions during his final year at BYU, that there was this expectation of kind of that Zach Wilson's going to be the savior of the franchise and that we don't really have to worry about anything because his level of play is going to have everyone else rise up, and that we're going to go from winning 4 or 5 games a year to winning 8, 9, 10, 11, and by the time he's a 3rd or 4th year player that we're going to go into Buffalo, we're going to go into Kansas City, Baltimore, and Cincinnati. Ironically, the discussions we're still having 4 years later, although Cincinnati wasn't at that level at that time, but we're going to go into those places and win because Zach Wilson is going to elevate the team. And ironically, that was kind of also the same mindset when they brought in Aaron Rodgers from the Packers a couple of years later, and as we know, both Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, for multiple reasons, did not work out as the Jets starting quarterback. Now, heading into the 2022 season, which of course was Wilson's 2nd season, I was really high on the Jets in terms of everything they did right from a process standpoint over the past couple of years. Unfortunately, as we know now, it didn't work out, but heading into the 2022 season, they were coming off of a 3-year draft span in which they selected Mekhi Becton in the 1st round, Zach Wilson, Elijah Vera Tucker, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall, and I really thought those 5 players could have been long-term pieces for the Jets offense, and I really like the situation that Zach Wilson was entering because he now definitively had his number 1 receiver. He wasn't throwing to Elijah Moore and Corey Davis and Keelan Cole and everybody else that was on the receiving core in 2021, and I thought the Jets did a lot of things right to set him up for success, and I credited Joe Douglas for making all of these moves and for putting Zach Wilson in a position to have a chance to succeed. Now, again, if there was a 1-sentence summary to summarize Zach Wilson's Jets career, it's that the game was too fast for him. He took forever to go through his reads, and that was always going to be a problem, whether the receiver was Garrett Wilson, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Randy Moss, or Jerry Rice, and that was the problem as to why he never succeeded with the Jets and why he is where he is today. Now, to go back to the draft bust versus draft disappointment conversation, there's a big difference between the two, at least in my personal opinion. I think Zach Wilson is a draft bust. He had 23 touchdowns to 25 interceptions, and the team that selected him number 2 overall was willing to move on from him just 2 years after selecting him number 2 overall, and if they weren't, they would not have traded for Aaron Rodgers to begin with, and that's the reality of the situation. Chicago gave Justin Fields a 3rd year, and believe it or not, Justin Fields actually finished 9th in MVP voting in 2022, as funny as that may sound. But there was also a reason the Bears were willing to move on from Justin Fields, and the Steelers for that matter too. Justin Fields did not live up to being a 1st-round pick, and it's certainly not fair to put Justin Fields in the category of Zach Wilson, Jamarcus Russell, and Ryan Leaf, and acknowledge that while he wasn't a franchise star, obviously, otherwise he'd still be there, it is okay to say that he's not a draft bust either, and I personally think that draft bust is a strong word, and that ultimately I don't think Justin Fields falls into that category, but a player who I do think falls into that category big time is the number 3 overall pick from this class in 49ers selection, Trey Lance. Trey Lance to me is one of the biggest draft busts, not just in the past 5 or 10 years, but really in NFL history, especially when you factor in everything that the 49ers gave up to go get him. They had the number 12 pick in the 2021 draft originally, and they traded that along with 2 future firsts to move up to number 3 so that they could go up and get Lance. And I will be honest, I like the plan they had for Lance from the start, as they were going to use 2021 as a redshirt year, and it made a lot of sense. Lance, of course, went to the FCS and North Dakota State, and he only played 1 game in the 2020 calendar year. So to move up from FCS to the NFL level is obviously a big transition in itself, especially when you factor in that he more or less had an entire calendar year off. So I love the idea of Kyle Shanahan and company giving him a redshirt year. 2022 was supposed to be the year where he took over, and that he was going to be the 49ers quarterback not just in 2022, but for the next 10 to 12 years and be the guy. And his tape at North Dakota State was pretty fun to watch, all things considered, but he suffered a season-ending injury very early in the year, and unfortunately for Trey Lance, a 7th round pick in 2022 by the name of Brock Purdy took his job over and never looked back. Entering the 2023 regular season, before they traded him to Dallas, Lance was 3rd on the 49ers depth chart behind, of course, Brock Purdy, who took the 49ers to the 2022 NFC Championship game, and free agent acquisition Sam Darnold. The writing was on the wall. The 49ers traded Trey Lance for a 4th round pick that was eventually used on Malik Mustafa, and Trey Lance played 1 game in 2 years for Dallas, which was in Week 18 of 2024 against the Washington Commanders, and fast forward to present day, and Trey Lance is now a Los Angeles Charger. This is a player that has thrown just over 140 career passes, and for a team that traded 3 first-round picks to go up and get Trey Lance, to me is undoubtedly one of the biggest draft busts in NFL history. Justin Fields was the 4th quarterback taken in this class, and a lot of the time, though not every time, when a quarterback fails or becomes a draft disappointment, a lot of the time the franchise fails too. There's expectations on both sides here, but Justin Fields, being a last-gasp save-my-job draft pick for Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, was setting him up to fail from the start. Now, could Justin Fields have played better during his time in Chicago? Absolutely, and that's one thing I try to regularly emphasize on the channel, is that a lot of the time it's usually a gray area pertaining to team situations. It's very rarely a black and white answer, case closed, X player or Justin Fields was clearly the problem, and that's that. There was a reason that Matt Eberflus, the same head coach that coached Justin for most of his time in Chicago, was the first coach in Bears franchise history to be fired during the season. But there's also a reason Justin Fields is on his 3rd team in 5 years. And Justin Fields' biggest problem that I don't think is ever going to be fixed at this point is he takes too long to throw the football. Every year in his NFL career, he's had an average time to throw of over 3 seconds. And I know Justin has athleticism that the majority of quarterbacks do not, but playing quarterback is as much mental as it is physical. I mean, there's a reason Tom Brady played for over 20 years, despite being the complete opposite of who Justin Fields is as a player. And out of 44 eligible quarterbacks in 2024, Justin Fields ranked 4th in average time to throw, only behind Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Sam Darnold. But in dropback percentage of getting rid of the football in less than 2.5 seconds, Justin Fields was second to last, only ahead of Darnold. Now, we know what happened with Darnold in the final few games of 2024, but Darnold threw for over 4,000 yards and threw 35 touchdowns last year, and went through his reads far more than he didn't. And I know people like to dunk on Sam Darnold for the ghosts and the final 2 games of 2024, but he threw 35 touchdowns last year, and Justin Fields has 45 career passing touchdowns. Now, you can bring up who Darnold had to throw the ball to last year, but the point is, this is who Justin Fields is as a player in 2025. He is a slow processor, and it shows up time and time again on tape. I know people also like to get their jokes in about the Jets and say just end the season, but I do think this is a pretty favorable situation for Justin entering 2025 because the Jets' offensive line is one of the best in the NFL. Now, I'm not getting into O-line rankings, but it is a very complete unit. But my biggest thing with Justin Fields, now that we're over 1,100 passes into his NFL career, is he doesn't read defenses well, and I don't think that's going to magically change at 26 years old. I think in the best case scenario, he has a solid year with the Jets and has a good year with his former college teammate Garrett Wilson and gets a large contract when the time comes. Justin Fields, the athlete, is a very fun player to think about and a guy you'd like to have in your offense and to keep read simple in the red zone, but for everything he projected at Ohio State, he never really developed. In a lot of ways, he's still the same guy he was entering his rookie year. Obviously, there are big splash plays here and there, and he was a very fun player during the 2022 season when the Bears had nobody on their roster, because they traded everyone away at the trade deadline, but at this point, Justin Fields is a dual-threat quarterback who struggles to consistently read the field. And I know there were some Steelers fans who were upset when they benched Justin Fields for Russ last year, but there was a reason for that, and it didn't happen by accident. Justin Fields needed to go to a good situation, and while he never developed to the player he was projected to be, I would also argue with that in a lot of ways, he was set up to fail from the start. Mac Jones was the 5th quarterback selected in the 2021 draft and was the 15th overall selection, and unfortunately for Mac Jones and Patriots fans, I think Mac is remembered most as a Patriot for the interception, we all know the interception, against the Colts in the Germany game in 2023. Now, Mac Jones did start 1 week after that, as it was against the Giants in what was a score that finished 10-7, and that was also in the game where Jabril Peppers was caught mic'd up saying to Saquon Barkley, quote, "You are lucky we are but," end quote, and he actually used a different word than but the point is that is Mac Jones' lasting image as a New England Patriot. It was not a good end to what was a really good start for Mac Jones and the Patriots. There was a point during the 2021 season where I thought he was going to be their franchise quarterback. Now, obviously, I didn't think he was going to be the next Tom Brady. That would not be fair to Mac or Drake May or anyone, but the point is he finished second in Offensive Rookie of the Year voting, and there was one play in particular against the Browns. If you remember this play as a Patriots fan, then you know the specific throw. It was on a post route where Mac Jones fitted in perfectly, his receiver made the play, and my jaw dropped when the touchdown was made. After that play, I legitimately thought the Patriots had their guy. I thought this was going to be a player that could lead this team for several years, and that he could potentially be the best quarterback from this class. But unfortunately, 2022 is a much different story, as Matt Patricia was calling plays, and Joe Judge was his quarterback's coach, and the 2022 and 2023 Patriots seasons, not just due to Mac Jones, but due to several other factors, were very, very forgettable years. And a common theme in today's video is that while several quarterbacks disappointed for the franchise that selected them, and in a couple of cases were draft busts, the franchise also didn't do their part in helping them either. Now, I do think the 49ers obviously did a tremendous job with Trey Lance, and that's a completely different discussion, but the Patriots certainly didn't help out Mac Jones the way that other franchises have helped their young quarterbacks over the past couple of years. And in Mac Jones' final year with the Patriots in 2023, this very well could be a trivia question someday, but who led the 2023 Patriots in receptions? It was none other than, you guessed it, Ezekiel Elliott, as he had 51 receptions for 313 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. After Zeke, it was Demario Douglas, Hunter Henry, Ramondre Stevenson, Kendrick Bourne, Devontae Parker, and Juju Smith-Schuster. And absolutely none of those guys strike fear in a defense, and it shouldn't come as a surprise that both Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi in 2023 led the Patriots to a top 3 overall pick, which ultimately led them to drafting quarterback Drake May. Whenever we do mock drafts on the channel and whenever we discuss draft prospects, I often call the generational word the G word because I think that word is used far too often, and this is a prime example as to why the generational word should not be thrown around in the draft process as regularly as it is. Yes, all 5 quarterback prospects had reasons to go in the first round. Trevor Lawrence specifically had several reasons to go in the first round, as he was a very, very good draft prospect, but due to the situations that teams put players in, a lot of the time the players are failed from the start. Now, I will acknowledge that all of these players, including Trevor Lawrence, had chances to become successful NFL players, and some of the players from this specific video were successful at one point in their career, specifically Mac Jones, Justin Fields, and even Trevor Lawrence, as he is the only quarterback from this class to have a playoff win. But a lot of the time, players are failed from the start, and it's not really their fault. Now, did Mac Jones play his way out of a job in New England in 2022 and 2023? Yes, but I would have loved to have seen Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or Joe Burrow play on either of those teams to see how they would have fared with that bad of a supporting cast. And that's the big thing that I want you to take away from today's video, is that very rarely in football is it one player, one team's, or one coach's fault. A lot of the times, players, coaches, and the organization all fail each other, and that was especially the case with the Bears and the Patriots with Justin Fields and Mac Jones, and ultimately why they played such a big part in the 2021 class being as disappointing as it was. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as it helps the channel tremendously, and we are closing in at 200,000 subscribers. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.